It's Superman time now, Ted.
Yes.
Yes, Superman questions. You directed an episode called Blast from the Past.
Yes.
Which introduced the Kryptonian couple Jaxer and Mala, which was kind of a substitute for General Zod. Were there ever any plans to bring Zod into the cartoons?
Not to my knowledge. When the movie came out, they couldn't do a novelization of the movie because they would have had to have paid Mario Puzo a big chunk of change. I have no idea why we weren't allowed to use Zod. I mean, I do like our Mala story because it was sort of like, brutal warrior woman who was like, all right, now we're a couple, right?
Yeah. In Blast from the Past, you also introduced the Phantom Zone projector, which you bring back for the Doomsday Sanction episode of GLU. Was that an intentional callback there, or just kind of remembering like, oh, that's an item?
Everything in Justice League outside of that one background issue is an intentional call out. Here's the deal. The reality is, when we're doing Superman, Bruce is like allergic to continuity. It's like, no, they're all independent episodes. We'll have two-parters, whatever. We might generally build on a theme, but we're not going to have direct continuity. Things kind of went out the window with Justice League, and I think what happened is he discovered Buffy. And then he went back and he read Marvel comics and all that stuff and realized how much fun continuity is.
So Joss Whedon affected this Justice League too.
Yes, in a good way. Connecting the dots was a lot harder because they were never made to connect before. It is a testament of Bruce, James, and Dwayne, geniuses at watching the old episodes and going, oh, let's pull this guy out of this episode. And, Milo shows up to be, the guy that the Doomsday. And
there's a question we have later, actually, that talks about this, so maybe we might as well jump into that.
I mean, basically, this was the question, was did you know in advance that you were going to tie these plot threads together?
No.
And the answer is no.
No. Back when we were doing the New Adventures and Darwin Cook came aboard, there was a shot in The Ultimate Thrill. He's chasing...
it's the Farmer Brown truck you're talking about, yeah.
Bingo, the Farmer Brown truck. That episode had not aired yet, and we had just gotten the script. Let's put this character in here. And we did the Farmer Brown truck in that thing as a call-out to an episode that was coming up.
In the new comic that's coming out by Paul Dini, The Adventures Continue. I don't know if you've read this at all, but...
I haven't. I need to get these. No, go ahead, spoil it.
Okay, there's a Farmer Brown van. It's a little thing. Deathstroke is introduced in the comic. He and his sidekick have the Farmer Brown van. So we speculated that maybe in The Ultimate Thrill, this is Slade driving the truck.
There you go. We'll just say it is.
Can we get on record that Critters is the best episode of the entire run of the new Batman Adventures?
Oh, bless your heart. I love the goat. The goat is
yes.
But one of the things at the record that was amazing was that Peter Breck, he missed a flight or something, and he drove all the way from Arizona or something to do the record. He's an old guy. He's not a young man, and he drove 9 or 10 hours to get to the record.
And you put him in one episode.
Nowadays,
he came back in Justice League. He came back.
Was this a canceled Farmer Brown Justice League appearance?
No, I just remember now. He's in the cabal of the. He is in that room
he was meant to be, but they didn't end up putting him in there. I think they ended up going with Hugo Strange instead.
Oh, for crying out loud! Oh, it's heartbreaking. You're right. That's my show too. I should know this.
We're trying to figure out the Superman the Animated Series era of it all. In Mixius Pixelated, the events jump to every 3 months on 4 separate occasions. So was it intended that the end of that episode is the present day and the other 3 sections happened beforehand, or?
That would be my guess. It's all a flashback up until the last one, because you have something take place in the future. I mean, that's just silly.
You say as you turn around with a big old
Batman Beyond.
Back then, there was no internet, or there wasn't really a helpful internet that would to get reference. I had to go to Pasadena and take a picture of this.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez. McGurk right there.
So I had to get reference from McGurk. Check out this treasure I have, too. Look at this. This is Bruce's little thumbnail sketch of the Two-Face title card.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay,
you're gonna have to just scan all
I know,
of
I was
this
gonna
in
say,
and
you have to
email
send
it
us
to
everything.
I know.
So you also directed Where There's Smoke, which is the Volcana episode.
Yes.
And she's an original character like Livewire, Harley Quinn. been creative for the animated universe.
I hope she shows up in the Batman comic, even though she never met Batman. Terry Gilpin played her from Frasier, and she was really fun.
Were you involved with the like design and stuff of her character? Or?
No, that was all Bruce. You don't step in the way of a girl character when he's designing a sexy.
Making a new girl character. Get out.
I'm like, no, Bruce. She should look like this. Yeah, no. I did actually do the preliminary design for the bad guy in that. It's clearly there's a certain spy agency at Marvel that we were kind of like, patch and all that. Yeah, we just made sure it's the other eye and the character looked. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is like one of our favorite James Bond films. It's really fabulous. It's
Lex Luthor character design.
Exactly, the Telly Savalas, yes. I did a little caricature of Lazenby. Bruce finessed it, made it good. That's kind of what it is. He's supposed to look a little like George Lazenby. Years later, I bump into him at the mall while we're working on Batman Beyond. I ask him if he does done voice work. He says he'd be open to it. I run back up and tell Bruce, and Bruce is like, yes, gets Andre on the phone. And that's how the King was cast. I'm like, oh, I did that. The same thing with Jeffrey Combs when he came as Scarecrow and all that stuff. And the later on question, but I bumped into him at the mall and I was like, oh my gosh, we got to get this guy.
My show,
So Dan, you directed multiple episodes, especially in Superman, that featured guest characters. What was the process like adapting these characters from the comics, like Dr. Fate?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Dr. Fate, so that was a big deal for me to get to do that. I was preoccupied with making his entrance be as dramatic as possible. We came up with the idea of doing the moire pattern thing for the Ankh to open, and we had a system, an animation system, Lion Lamb thing, and we used to test stuff out. I used to cut out paper and cells and actually like do stuff with markers and figure out the smear effects and all that stuff. I do it by hand, and with the Ankh we kind of figured out how that moire pattern would look. This is a bunch of
okay,
right? And you get two of them on a cell, so it would be black on white. And then the effect you get is this.
Oh.
Jeez.
So you slide it back and forth, and it radiates out, and it does this really cool thing. So we sent
That's the stuff that impresses me the most of anything in the animation in the earlier, the pre-digital shows is like the airbrushing on Mr. Freeze's helmet, all that kind of stuff.
Yes,
of like,
all
oh my
this.
God, it's just so impressive.
So that was kind of my thing. Was like I was really into effects and timing stuff like that, trying to figure out how to do the fire for Apocalypse, and
that's just I don't know. I just love this stuff. When we interviewed Alan Burnett a couple of years ago, he told us about how the Legacy finale to Superman was actually kind of intended to be more of like an opening for a new season.
Yes. I like the idea of a world that some people feared Superman. Most people would be appreciative, thankful, here's this guy, oh my gosh, he's going to save us, blah, blah. And then you'd have a bunch of people that would actually distrust him.
Don't you remember when he blew up a bunch of stuff?
The Man of Steel, and Batman and all that stuff, they kind of went there with that. He's an alien. Look what he can do. This is not of this earth. This should be repulsive to some people. Some people, it's like their reality is just like skewed. Yeah. So I kind of thought it would be kind of cool if we would show that. And everyone went, no, it wouldn't. And DC was like, no, Superman must be loved.
Off screen before Justice League.
He must be loved by all and occasional bad generals and villains only. We can't really have that. And I get it. It's a kid's show. You can't really have that in complexity.
Justice League Unlimited really went there though with that fear-mongering stuff. So
exactly, that's the thing. We went there, and that was a Dwayne thing where Dwayne felt like, and it was kind of cool because once he came up with this theory and expressed it, we're like, oh, that's why he was such a wuss in the first season, because his one fear is losing control. Darkseid brainwashing him. It's like he knows that this can happen. He's a little insecure about that, and that's why he kind of pulls back more than he should. That's kind of why he's got a group of people that's kind of helping him up and backing him up, so he doesn't lose control and he doesn't go too far, and he doesn't have to be the guy to punch everybody because he might, The Superman Revenge Squad is something that was an old thing in the Silver Age, and I thought it would be kind of cool to update that by having them worship Superman. They see him as a deity, and he turns on them because he doesn't want anybody worshiping him, so they have to kill him. It's a cult that wants to kill him. DC was like, no, nobody worships Superman. We don't cross that line with him, and they did that with Supergirl recently finale on the series. So it's like,
Yeah.
they've done this. So I'm like, okay, well, I got to see somebody else do that.
It's a different world now, Dan. It's not 1996 anymore. Right?
Yeah.
So you directed both the series premiere and the series finale of Superman the Animated Series. What's it like to be responsible for both starting and ending a show? Because you're both like setting the tone of the early episodes and then tying it all together at the end.
Something like Superman, we were really just trying to get it done. The stress isn't like, oh, it's the first episode. It's like we're trying to get this thing off the ground. And also it's a very atypical first episode because you're dealing with Jor-El the entire story. It's like, hey, I'm doing the Jor-El show, you know.
Brainiac has always been from Krypton in my book,
right?
And so the fact that he's not in most other versions, if not all other versions, is so weird.
I know, and that was Alan's idea. And Bruce was actually like, ooh, I don't know, this is really a big thing, and I don't know if we can do this, if they'll let us. And then he read it in the outline, and we were like, no, this works. But so then when it came to that was a lot of establishing what Krypton looks like, a lot of stuff that's sort of atypical. It bided us time to help develop Metropolis, though, because that was a tough thing, try to get that off the ground and kind of figure out the city that should be different from Gotham. You've seen the artwork for the original Bruce take on it. You know, I was nearly heartbroken when we went in a different direction, and then we kind of went, wait a second, you're setting yourself off, like big time.
The comparison.
Because
that's true.
You know, it's like, TMS episodes are going to be beautifully animated, and we're going to have, phenomenal, but you're never going to get that Fleischer quality. And then the other thing was that folding Kirby into that old-timey style would have been more difficult.
Who doesn't want to see Darkseid dressed up, flapper dress and all that kind of
I was thinking that too.
But what's cool about that, Legacy was that, it was easy. that was all easy. Because you got Darwin Cook boarding, then the confrontation with Darkseid and Superman was all Bruce. And then the ending of the show was like that kiss on the rooftop of the
where Superman's neck disappears for a few frames.
Oh, awesome! Really? Oh man! I hope they fix that on a Blu-ray.
They won't.
You were part of the crew on Secret Origins as well. That kind of lightly hints at the events of Legacy, how some people don't trust Superman anymore. Was there like any kind of back and forth about incorporating that even more?
Well, I think that there's a reason for that, because we wanted to kind of, again, we still hadn't got into the continuity thing yet. We were kind of hinting at it because we didn't really want to discuss why Batman has a new utility belt and why his ears are slightly different and all this stuff, because it was like, we like this.
They're not. They're not actually.
At the time, we weren't as focused on continuity until later. And then when we realized we had to use Star Labs, Emil Hamilton, his very last shot in Legacy was like, I used to like Superman, but now I don't know. And you're like, okay, there you go. He's not a friend anymore. That worked out really great that had been set up. And then even to set up this thing with Supergirl cloned and all of that stuff, it's all there. It's all there in that episode. Yeah. The groundwork for so much. Alive didn't have any kind of connection to me as an ending as much as Epilogue did, because we really thought the show was over at that point.
Right.
We were like, this is it. We're done. We're going out with the beginning. That was filled with Easter eggs and stuff we did for ourselves that nobody's ever going to understand. I'll show you something.
Show us.
This book, this is an artist named Henry Vallely, and Bob Kane owned a ton of these. You'll recognize this image from the first origin story of Batman. That's Bruce Wayne pondering.
Okay.
There's a shot of Terry pondering, calling his girlfriend.
Oh yeah, he's totally sitting at the table just like that.
And I gave this to the board artist, Bob Smith, and so he actually like aped that shot exactly.
Nice.
So like flipping it back.
I also wonder if that Gangbusters title has anything to do with the Clayface origin episode. He's in a movie called Gangbusters.
It's possible, because we had a bunch of these pictures all over the studio while we were working on it, because we wanted, this guy was a big inspiration for us.
You were part of the crew for the episode Legends, where we meet a team of heroes from a parallel universe called the Justice Guild. They're obviously, derived from the Justice Society.
Yes.
Can you shed some light on why these new characters came into being rather than using the JSA versions?
DC loved the script. They saw that outline and they went, oh, this is awesome, but we're not going to let you do it.
Can I take a guess why?
Tell me, what do you think?
Because they die at the end.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because it's revealed that they're dead. We don't want their introduction to the cartoon being that they're dead. And it's ironic because now they're doing Stargirl, and the introduction to the JSA is that they're dead.
They're dead.
So Paul Levitz actually was like, look, we really don't want you to kill the story because it's really good. We want this to exist, but we just can't let it be the JSA. Would you mind creating a new group that's like the JSA. For people who weren't familiar with the comic, it would actually work as like a Super Friends, as any kind of older superhero group. It doesn't have to necessarily be the Justice Society if you're not familiar with them. The problem with it was coming up with the names, because everything legal was like crazy, and you're like, oh, the Scarlet Speedster, and like, no, because that's what the Flash is called.
And you settled on the Streak? Come on.
We ran out of steam coming up with stuff. They were like, you know what, we own a Catman. What we did, so that it's legal in the Tombstone, it is the character that DC owns, the villain.
Right.
You're
right.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep.
Which exactly. Thomas Blake was in the new Batman adventures.
Yeah.
Right. But what was really kind of cool though is that then in the Arrowverse and Flash, whatever, they brought in Black Siren. They used our character from our universe that we came up with for our show. I'm hoping the Justice Lords show up on Supergirl someday. Cool. You know, maybe in that Superman and Lois show, they'll do the Justice Lords. And that came out of the fact that Bruce thought that the Crime Syndicate was dumb. He's like, no, you can't have a universe where good is bad and bad is good. That's just dumb. I want to make something more complex.
And then you got your Superman that nobody likes that you wanted to do.
And that's even more impetus. Not only Darkseid brainwashed Superman, but you also have a guy in another universe that's taken over. If it was like, is Darkseid good in that realm? No, that doesn't work out. That's not.
Superman killed the president. I, Darkseid, will not stand for this.
Here's the thing. Legends is really cool on a lot of levels. After we're done with the show, and I'm reading an article in Alter Ego by Roy Thomas talking about how he came up with the Kree-Skrull War. We were very inspired by Marvel. Okay, fine, sue us. The idea of Brainwave being the sidekick, Ray Thompson. Not too far from Roy Thomas. He's the one who created the Justice Guild out of his mind, which is how the Kree-Skrull War ends, where the Supreme Intelligence gives Rick the power to create the Golden Age. All the Golden Age characters pop out of his head and then defeat the Skrulls and then go back into his head or whatever.
Legends feels very much less Deus Ex Machina than
yes. Well, yeah. And it's also kind of like a horrible ending, because it's like, we lived in this wonderful fantasy, Matrix kind of fantasy where everything was kind of nice. Now we have to deal with this rebuilding world kind of
Justice
thing.
League.
But here's the funny thing is that, yes, we were inspired by that. Roy Thomas mentions that he got that idea from Gardner Fox. It was Gardner Fox's suggestion on how to bring the Justice Society back to DC, and they went with Earth 2 instead. And we have no idea that it was originally DC, stole it back and put it where it belonged. Awesome. Where Gardner Fox wanted it in the first place.
I think we're moving on to Superhero Static Shock. Woo-hoo.